Hello, I am Nikki Farler from Robinson Elementary, and my grant was taking task boxes on the road in a mobile ABA library at Robinson Elementary. This is my 12th year teaching in the Perry County school system. This is my 6th year at Robinson. I co-teach and do resource setting. Many of my students, the majority of my students on my caseload, have some sort of sensory issue that requires ABA interventions in order for them to make consistent progress. We are a small K-8 in Perry County in Erie, Kentucky, and currently our enrollment is about 180 students. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have operated on virtual learning and have transitioned through that time into a hybrid model, like most of the districts around us. I know everyone's hybrid model has been different throughout the year, but what did hybrid look like, or what does hybrid currently look like at Robinson Elementary? In Perry County, we are working on a hybrid model that is driven by parent choice, in which parents get to choose from two options. The first option, students work virtually and are learning 5 days a week from home and receive special education services that are delivered through virtual services. And then option 2, student receive in-person instruction 4 days a week with Mondays, everyone being virtual. Now, the majority of my students initially chose that virtual option, and slowly but surely, here with 45 days left with the school year, I still have about 25% of my caseload are still working virtually. So, as everyone else has during the pandemic, I wanted to look at how we were going to meet that virtual challenge. Nearly a year ago, all of us got pushed into this virtual teaching hybrid model, and we were all learning the pitfalls and trying to figure out the best way that we could service our students. And the majority of my moderate to severe students all chose option 1. And so my question was, and the question that I had for my grant was, how can we continue our task-based learning at home? Because most of these students learn through hands-on instruction, not just severe and moderate students. Most students learn, I know I do, better when you can attack it hands-on and have a concrete way to connect your skills to those concrete situations. So, as I said, my focus area was to answer the previous question. How can we create? We're going to create a task box learning library for our students who are working in structured task-based learning. Over the summer, we polled our parents and found that all of the parents had access to a cell phone, and most had good cell service. They were also aware of how to use the QR code. So they also said that they were very unsure how to complete the tasks that were sent home to them last spring, and really just had no confidence in their ability to teach their child the way that they know they've been successful at school. And the common response, we've heard it time and time again this year, we are not teachers. We're not teachers, we're their parents. And so we wanted to give our parents those tools, 1, to give them confidence, but 2, to lessen the frustration of the students, because the students are used to being presented skills in these task modeling, repetitive practice, concrete ways in our classroom. So, what we did for our grant was using the knowledge from our school survey and our county survey in order to address the needs of parents and caregivers and the concerns that they had as far as not having the confidence to be able to teach their children the way they would normally be taught, and becoming frustrated because they don't feel they're doing as good a job as we would here at school. Each box has a QR code where they can take their cell phone and scan the QR code, and you get a video of myself or the speech therapist or the occupational therapist showing the parent how to initiate the task with the student and what we are looking for. Now, that did transition some during our grant, and we're going to discuss that in just a second. Parents initially had to assign an agreement that they would take care of the products and the resources, and it was their responsibility to return the resources when the meal bus comes on Mondays. I'm discussing the meal box. That has been a great partnership at our school throughout the pandemic. Beginning last year, there's been consistent food service from Robinson Elementary throughout the summer and into the fall and continuing in the spring. As I said before, Perry County is working on a hybrid model where 4 days a week we are in person, but on Mondays we're virtual. So on Mondays, the Perry County Schools Food Service Program and the Perry County Transportation Department still deliver a week's worth of food to those students that are on virtual, and bag lunches and things for students that are home for that Monday virtual instruction. So what we needed to implement, our projects, since we were currently in quarantine, so that's been delayed. So I utilized iPads from the previous grant and in order to meet all the needs that are covered in the ABA system, our speech therapists and our OT therapists were consulted on those materials. We also ordered items to create adapted learning, and we ordered SD cards and a digital video camera to do our videos. Most of the budget for the grant was spent on lakeshore materials and activities that our students were familiar with and were able to continue on those goals and objectives that they had laid out in their IEPs. But we tried to spread them out and give them something academic, but something that would also give them some fine motor reinforcement and some academic and communication engagement as well. So, as I discussed before, our grant timeline, we have found this year more than anything else is that you can have plans and COVID can have complete other plans. Since my last presentation in the fall, our district was not in session for 2 months, which delayed the implementation of our grant by 2 months. Perry County chose to not be in session the month of November and December. And prior to those months, due to a COVID outbreak at my school, we had an additional week and a half of no instruction. So my school had 10 weeks and a half of no instruction due to COVID. So that really impacted our timeline and pushed everything back. So our materials were ordered in November, but virtual and in-person instruction commenced again in Perry County Schools in January. So in-person and virtual instruction began in January. In mid-January, I waited about 2 weeks to get everybody back in the swing of things before we sent home our boxes. And here's our task box. And then in February, we had flooding presented challenges. We had some materials that were flood damaged during that time as well. March was our first full month of consistent virtual in-person instruction and data collecting. So we had 5 weeks at the end of February and the whole month of March that just ended where we could consistently get data and have students in the routine of the boxes. The great thing about this project that hadn't really happened in either one of the other in the previous grants that I've done is that we've been able to extend this project through other KVEC opportunities that I had taken a part of in order to help my class. Since I started the grant, we had a handwriting without tears training with KVEC and alphabet hubs training with KVEC and the alternate assessment math trainings. Using the materials from all of those trainings has also been able for me to extend the life of these boxes and extend our ability in the topics that we were able to implement through these boxes. Being able to blend the resources that I got from the trainings from KVEC and then the materials I was able to purchase from the grant has really expanded the reach of this grant and been able to expand the progress and the reach for my students that have been participating. If you will look down here in the bottom corner, you will see a large blackboard that was actually got at a previous KVEC training. And this student has been working on number writing and handwriting, and this was the first time he had consecutively done 1 through 8. And he likes the bigger chalkboard rather than doing the smaller one. So this is just one finite example of success that we've been able to get through my grant. Another situation that I never would have dreamed of when we started this grant was transitioning back in person. When we started back in January, students were given the option whether to come back in person or to stay on virtual as we had done back in the fall. About half of my caseload stayed home for virtual instruction and half came back. As these students stayed longer at home, transition back to in-person learning or even targeted tutoring sessions became very stressful for these students. So what can happen to them when they come back? So I partnered with the local Lowe's, and they helped us get some wood and some other, wood was really the big project because the students like to use their own materials at home. So wood and stain is what they were able to help us with. And these wood projects, these wood building projects began at home with videos, and they have transitioned back to targeted learning for one student. The student walking down the hallway is in the targeted learning group. And then you'll see a picture of these guys working here. Actually, this is one student, Josh, who is working to transition back to in-person, and he's in person now. But we've used these boxes and these woodworking projects that they absolutely love to help them slowly transition and make this transition process less traumatic for these students, because this is something they've never dealt with before. And students with severe disabilities, moderate to severe disabilities, and also students on the spectrum, transition is so difficult for them anyway in a normal situation. So when we add pandemic and the use of masks and just the fear of germs and just the isolation of being home for extended months, transitioning back to in-person or just coming to targeted learning has been very traumatic for them. So these projects would be started at home, and then they bring their tub with them, and they also bring their toolbox. If you can see the middle picture down at the bottom, he loves to bring his toolbox with him for targeted learning. They start the project at home, and we continue that project here at school. So you get the same kind of learning that they've been having before. It's something they enjoy, and it's made that transition a little less stressful for our students. And again, this is a byproduct of this grant that we never dreamed that we could use it for. So it's blossomed into something that our students love and made school a safer place for them, a less worrisome place. And it's just been a neat byproduct of our ABA library. And if you will see this down here at the bottom, we have a little, a small video of him working on his sanding project. Okay, one more. Okay, project outcomes. 5 of my students consistently participated in the program. All of the students were on virtual instruction for the first grading period or longer. I still have 4 of those students still participating virtually. All of the students continue at that point in January had about a 30% participation rate among these kids. They were doing the things that they like to do and not participating so much in the academic portions of the assigned tasks. So when we added the more hands-on tasks, the participation rate increased dramatically to 80%. 80% of assignments that were assigned were being completed. Now the completion for hands-on tasks is a little bit different. Some parents preferred to send a video of their child participating in the task. That was great. Sometimes that was asked for when they would do the QR code. Other times, students will send a picture of the completed project and put that as the outcome. And they would apply that to their Google Classroom. However, there was one student that didn't like to be photographed and didn't like for their work to be photographed. So when we would have our Google Meet on Friday, they would show me the task that they were completing. So the outcomes were measured kind of differently given each student. But overall, the participation of the students in the task increased dramatically. But that's just the numbers game of the outcomes. Let's look a little bit deeper. So was this a successful launch of my library? The aim of this project was continuing the students to have progress despite being virtual. My students who participated all have made gains, whether small or large gains. They have made gains since the beginning of working with their task boxes. One has completely transitioned back and is here at school and doing in person and is still continuing the boxes. Over time with the boxes, we have been able to use them as a reward or position in their visual schedules to where they'll do an unpreferred task and then go to the box. So we've also been able to really hone in on the tasks the students prefer, and that's really been great as far as scheduling them and getting those preferred tasks in there. Over time, we've had one student read his first leveled reader with the task boxes and recordings. We had another student, this little guy down here, who's working on sight words. He wrote his name for the first time through the use of the task boxes. So beyond the numbers game of this, beyond the increased participation, beyond the continuing to have a positive trend line, there are meaningful milestones for these students that seemed impossible to accomplish in March on virtual instruction. We have a video here of a student in kindergarten who has worked on one of these leveled readers. His is about dogs having fun. This was sent home in a task box with the addition of sight work cards and the vocabulary. So he and his mom worked on this particular task box for 3 weeks. And then you'll get to see him, just a little bit of him reading his first story. He can read Dogs Having Fun. And he did great. And if you'll look down here, in the other corner, I had a student who learned to write his name this year through task boxes, through the expansion with the crossover of the training of Handwriting Without Tears. We had been working specifically on his name. We felt with that intervention that he would be able to write his name. And you can see here, this is the first time he wrote his name completely. So beyond the numbers of this, like I said previously, these kids made gains. These kids had moments that their parents and I will treasure because of the implementation of these task boxes. So where do we go from here? Ultimately, this has began our ABA library for the students in my class. Currently, I still have students that are on virtual and continue till we finish in June. So they are continuing with their task boxes. And as you have seen as we overlook this project, they will continue with this because now this is their comfort. This is their touchstone of their day. And they look forward to using the task boxes and the materials in the task boxes to check off their schedules for each day. We will continue to use this project. I don't want you to feel like we just use this with our virtual kids. Our aides and classroom teachers that are in person, when the student goes back to their classroom, have really leaned on this, and they are more confident in the tasks that are sent back with the student that need to be completed in the classroom. Also, one of the other things that we are continuing to do, and we were able to do because of the grant, is we also added adaptive text. We were able to get a binder and a classroom laminator and cardstock and some other things, and we were able to do adaptive text. So one of these adaptive books went home with our students, and we were able to read these adaptive books with them. So this lending library went from, we need to have ABA tasks for these students to complete at home, to a learning library, to college and career readiness types of projects for my older students. And now we've come full circle. Now we're assisting them and transitioning them back to in-person learning. And all of this cannot have been accomplished without the assistance of KVEC and this grant. So thank you, KVEC, for allowing my students to have the opportunity to succeed in times when we didn't think that was possible. I also had a lot of help from the Perry County Schools Transportation Department, who were awesome about the bus drivers delivering our task boxes each week and making sure that I get them back. They've been great about that. a great thank you to Lowe's of Hazard, who's helped us with our wood projects and our stain and wood. We really appreciate that. If you have any questions about our my ABA library, please contact me, or you can contact Heather Sharp. My email is nikki.farler@perry.kyschools.us. I will be happy to help you in any way that I can. These task boxes has opened my eyes to a million different ways that we can help our students on the spectrum or our severe students. So thank you again, KVEC, for giving my students the opportunity to thrive during the pandemic.